The hallway roared with laughter. Camera phones raised high as the sound of fabric tearing echoed like a gunshot. Emily's thrift store skirt, split at the side, yanked mercilessly by one of the seniors. Her books clattered to the floor, her face blazing red as a dozen pairs of eyes locked on her exposed legs. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "Nice underwear." The three girls, Brittany, the ringleader, with a cruel smirk, and her two shadows, Tessa and Chloe, laughed like it was the best joke they'd ever told. The humiliation was instant brutal, and it burned deep. Emily Carson, 17, wasn't used to attention. She kept her head down, stuck to her small circle of friends, and dressed in whatever she could find at the second-hand shop her mom frequented. Brittany had always hated her, not for anything Emily did, but because she was quiet, which in Brittany's mind made her an easy target. Emily had been on the receiving end of their taunts before, but today the bullies decided to up the ante. She bent down quickly, clutching the torn fabric, together with one hand, her eyes fixed on the floor, to avoid the cameras. Students pressed in their laughter, slicing through her like glass. The fluorescent lights overhead felt too bright, turning her shame into a public spectacle. Every second stretched the moment, carved into her memory with excruciating detail. "Guess this isn't your color," Brittany jeered, dangling a strip of torn fabric like a trophy. The crowd howled. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to vanish, to crawl into a space so small no one could ever find her. But behind the heat of embarrassment, something else started to stir, a slow, steady pulse of rage. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring the way shoulders bumped her, ignoring the whispers. Her heart pounded as she slipped into the girls' locker room. The moment the door shut behind her, the noise faded, and she gripped the sink with trembling hands. Her reflection in the mirror stared back, tear-brimmed eyes, flushed cheeks, hair falling loose from its ponytail. She thought of her father, gone for years, but still in her heart. He'd been a karate instructor, the one who'd taught her how to defend herself when she was just a kid. "Don't go looking for fights," he used to say. "But if a fight finds you, don't be afraid to finish it." She'd promised herself she'd never need those lessons. But right now, that promise felt like a chain holding her down. Her phone buzzed in her bag. She knew what it was. Snapchat videos tagged with her name spreading like wildfire across the school. She didn't open them. She didn't need to. She could already hear the whispers tomorrow. Emily straightened, pulling in a deep breath. The trembling stopped. The shame didn't go away, but it sharpened into something she could hold, something that felt like steel in her veins. They thought she was weak. They thought she'd just take it. They were wrong. Emily sat on the bench in the locker room, clutching the ripped skirt in her lap. The laughter from the hallway still echoed in her ears, but now it was a distant hum under the pounding of her own heartbeat. She stared at the floor tiles, tracing the cracks between them, replaying the moment Brittany's smirk split across her face like a blade. Her phone buzzed again. This time, she looked. The first video that popped up was titled, "Charity Case Skirt Rip LOL." She tapped it, and there it was. Her humiliation in crystal clear detail, replayed in slow motion with laughing emojis raining across the screen. Brittany's voice was loud over the chaos. Bet this cost her entire week's allowance. The comment section was already filling with mocking remarks. Emily closed the app and set her phone down. She could cry. She could hide. But deep in her gut, another choice began to take root. Her mind flashed back to the years she spent in the back of her dad's dojo. She'd been the smallest kid in her age group, always underestimated, always the one the bigger students thought they could push around. That was until the day she sent a boy twice her size sprawling on the mat with a single, precise kick. Her dad's grin had been wide and proud. That he'd said is what happens when they think small means weak. She hadn't trained much since he passed away, but muscle memory never really dies. And neither does pride. Wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, Emily pulled her gym bag closer. Inside, buried beneath a tangle of clothes, was the pair of black sneakers she wore for sparring practice back when her dad was still alive. She slipped them on the familiar snugness wrapping around her like armor. If Brittany thought today was her victory, she was in for a surprise. As Emily changed into her spare leggings, a quiet plan started to form. She'd overheard Tessa earlier in the week talking about some after-school fun. They had planned something about breaking in a new freshman girl who had just transferred from out of state. Emily had brushed it off at the time, but now her ears replayed every detail. She could stop it. She knew Brittany's routine. She knew where she parked. And she knew that after school, the parking lot would be empty enough for no teachers to witness what was about to happen. The thought didn't scare her. It steadied her. This wasn't about petty revenge anymore. It was about ending their game once and for all. Emily stood pulling her hair into a tighter ponytail. The girl who'd walked into this locker room, humiliated, wasn't the one walking out. This Emily had a goal, a target, and the skills to make sure she wasn't the victim ever again. As the last bell of the day approached, she stayed quiet in her seat, letting the minutes crawl by. She didn't need an audience. She didn't need backup. She just needed Brittany, Tessa, and Chloe to show up like they always did. And when they did, Emily would be ready. The final bell rang, and the tide of students surged toward the exits. Emily slipped into the flow, blending in with the crowd, until she reached the side doors that led to the parking lot. The warm afternoon sun hit her face, but she barely noticed. Her focus was locked on a specific row of cars at the far end. The spot where Brittany and her entourage always parked their gleaming white Jeep. From behind the shade of an old oak tree near the lot's edge, Emily scanned the scene. Her phone buzzed with group chat notifications, more fallout from the morning incident, but she ignored them. Across the lot, Brittany, Tessa, and Chloe were leaning against the Jeep, sipping iced coffees, their laughter carrying across the open air. They looked relaxed, confident, like predators, with the whole field to themselves. A few minutes later, their intended target appeared, a petite girl with strawberry blonde hair, clutching her books to her chest. Emily recognized her from the cafeteria, a freshman who kept to herself, always sitting in the corner. The girl's pace slowed as she noticed Brittany waving her overall fake sweetness. Emily's stomach tightened. She knew this play by heart. The bullies would lure her close, surround her, and then the joke would start. It could be anything. Spilled drinks, insults, maybe even something worse. Emily stepped from the shade, her sneakers silent on the pavement. She moved at a measured pace, her eyes fixed on the group, her mind rehearsing every motion she might need. The training her dad drilled into her years ago came flooding back: stances, balance, where to place her weight, how to strike fast and clean. "Hey, new girl," Brittany called to the freshman, her voice dripping sugar. "Come here, we just want to talk." The freshman hesitated, glancing around, clearly uneasy. Emily closed the gap between herself and the Jeep, angling her path so she'd come up from behind the bullies. She heard Chloe whisper something that made Tessa snort. The freshman's steps faltered, and that was when Brittany reached out, curling her fingers into the strap of the girl's backpack. Emily's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Let her go." The three seniors turned, surprise flashing across their faces. Brittany's smirk returned almost instantly. "Well, look who it is. Thought you'd be hiding under a rock after this morning." Emily ignored the jab, her eyes locked on Brittany's hand, still gripping the freshman's strap. "I said, let her go." Tessa and Chloe shifted, flanking Brittany like bodyguards, but Emily didn't move. Her stance was calm, solid, grounded. Inside, her pulse was steady, not from lack of fear, but from the certainty of what was about to happen. The freshman's wide eyes darted between them, but Emily gave her a small nod. It's okay. Step back. Brittany laughed a sharp, mocking sound. Oh, this is rich. You gonna fight us in the parking lot, Karate Kid? Emily didn't answer. She didn't have to. She was already 3 steps ahead, watching Brittany's weight shift, reading the way her arms moved. The trap was set not for Emily, but for them. In a few seconds, they were going to learn the hard way that today's victim had teeth. Her right foot pivoted sharply, and her left leg shot upward in a flawless roundhouse kick, the motion so fast, Brittany never saw it coming. Her heel connected with Brittany's side, just under the ribs, with a crack of impact that echoed across the parking lot. The air left Brittany's lungs in a stunned gasp as she crumpled sideways, clutching her side and staggering back against the Jeep. Tessa froze for a split second before charging, but Emily sidestepped, catching her wrist mid-swing and twisting. The move was quick and controlled enough to drop Tessa to her knees with a yelp of pain, but not enough to break anything. Emily shoved her away, releasing the hold just as Chloe came at her from behind. Without turning fully, Emily drove her elbow back, catching Chloe squarely in the stomach. Chloe doubled over, wheezing, stumbling backward, until she hit the side of the Jeep. The freshman stood frozen, a few yards away, her books clutched to her chest, eyes wide. But Emily didn't break her focus. She watched Brittany struggle to stand straight, her face twisted in fury and disbelief. You, Brittany started, but the word cut off into a cough. You're dead. Emily took a step forward, her voice low, steady, and calm. No, you're done. Around them, a small crowd had gathered. A few students who'd been heading to their cars had stopped to watch phones out capturing every second. The same social media that humiliated her this morning was now recording Brittany and her crew, doubled over nursing bruised egos and sore bodies. Brittany's glare faltered when she realized the cameras were aimed at her. She pushed herself upright, trying to look unfazed, but the slight wince gave her away. This isn't over, she spat. Emily held her gaze for a beat longer, then turned her back on them, a move as deliberate as the kick itself. She walked to the freshman, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. You okay? The girl nodded mutely. Together, they left the parking lot, the murmurs of the crowd and the buzz of recording phones following in their wake. Emily didn't need to look back to know Brittany and her friends were watching, and for the first time, they weren't laughing. By the next morning, the school was buzzing. The same hallways that had rung with laughter at Emily's expense just a day earlier now hummed with a different kind of energy, curiosity, awe, and a faint undercurrent of fear. The parking lot videos had spread overnight. They were on TikTok, Instagram, even reposted to a few martial arts forums where strangers debated her form and technique. Clips looped endlessly, Brittany crumpling after the kick, Tessa yelping on her knees, Chloe stumbling against the Jeep. Each replay came with captions like, "Don't mess with Emily," and "From victim to legend." Emily walked into school with her head high, her steps measured and unhurried. Conversations quieted as she passed eyes tracking her. Some students offered nods of respect. Others kept their distance, suddenly unsure of how to treat the girl they used to overlook. Near her locker, the freshman from yesterday approached, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you for, stepping in. Emily smiled back, her tone light. You don't have to thank me. Just don't let them scare you. But the moment didn't stay quiet for long. Brittany and her crew appeared at the far end of the hallway, moving slower than usual. Brittany's arm was wrapped around her midsection, her posture stiff. The moment their eyes met, Emily saw the flicker of something that hadn't been there before: hesitation. They didn't come closer. They didn't say a word. Instead, Brittany's gaze slid away, and she led her friends down a different hallway. The crowd noticed. Whispers followed them like a shadow. The invincible trio had been knocked down a peg, and everyone knew it. Emily turned back to her locker. her expression calm. She didn't need to gloat, didn't need to rub it in. The point had been made, and the balance had shifted. Throughout the day, teachers pretended not to know what had happened, but Emily caught more than one, giving her a faint, approving smile. The freshmen sat with her at lunch, and a few other students joined ones who'd always been too nervous to defy Brittany's crowd. By the last bell, Emily realized something. It wasn't just about the fight. It was about what it represented. That strength didn't always come from size or popularity or being the loudest voice in the room. Sometimes it came from the quiet ones who knew when to stand their ground. As she walked home, the late afternoon sun warming her back, she thought of her father's words again. If a fight finds you, don't be afraid to finish it. Yesterday, she had finished it. And deep down, she knew Brittany would think twice before starting another. The videos would fade. The whispers would move on. But the shift in how people saw her, that would last. Emily smiled to herself, her footsteps steady, knowing she'd face them on her terms. Emily's experience was a reminder that silence doesn't mean weakness, and kindness doesn't mean surrender. Bullies thrive on the belief that their victims won't push back, but courage often hides in the most unexpected places. By standing her ground, Emily not only defended herself, but also inspired others to realize their own strength. Confronting injustice doesn't always require a crowd or a stage. Sometimes it's a single decisive moment that changes everything. The lesson is simple. When someone tries to strip you of your dignity, you have the right and the power to take it back. And that power lives in all of us.